You're watching NASA TV.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us to discuss the upcoming US spacewalks to continue solar array upgrades aboard the International Space Station. I'm NASA's Leah Cheshire, and today I am joined by Dina Cantella, Operations Integration Manager for the International Space Station, Anthony Varia, Spacewalk Flight Director, Fiona Turret, Spacewalk Flight Director, Keith Johnson, a Spacewalk Officer, and Chris Mundy, Spacewalk Officer.
That particular mission is bringing up one part that's critical for the arrays, or for the spacewalks, I should say. It is called a mod kit. It's a collection of brackets that the team will talk about here today that will go out on a solar array wing. The crew will assemble it partially inside and take it outside. And that comes up on Cygnus, so that's a key component. Then we've got the SpaceX 26 mission also later this month. So that is going to launch on November 19th is the current plan. And SpaceX is securing the range on that date, still working on that. Of course, that date was selected to give us enough time for turnaround, essentially, between the Falcon Heavy on the pad and then this particular F9. So, and we are watching for subtropical storm Nicole, which is out there, of course, potentially headed to Florida towards the end of this week. So, as always, we're watching the weather as it evolves out of KSC. So, anyway, so those two missions alone, even without spacewalks, they are really busy, and so there's a lot of science, a lot of cargo ops that are involved. Plus, and I've failed to mention for SpaceX 26 that the IROSA arrays, the ISS rollout solar arrays, those are in the trunk for that mission, and so there's robotic ops associated with that. So, a very busy time. In addition to that, we have 4 Russian spacewalks that are happening in the same time frame as well, and there is some shared equipment amongst the U.S. and Russian sides, and so we're very carefully choreographing all those operations. So a really busy time frame. So that's the context I wanted to bring to this.
So that shows the P6 truss right now. That's arrays on 2 Bravo and 4 Bravo. We have power channels 1 Bravo through 4 Bravo, 1 Alpha through 4 Bravo. And so those 2 channels out on P6 already had both EVAs done, both upgrades. And so those arrays are producing power, and that power is good for us because we like to make that power into great science on board. And so Josh and Frank with Nicole and Koichi helping them on the inside, Josh and Frank are going to be going out and setting up the scaffolding to attach those arrays for 1 Bravo. So that's a great picture right there of what that scaffolding looks like. It's the protrusions on the bottom of the beta gimbal assembly, that barrel-looking thing at the base of the solar array, the traditional solar array. Now, those solar arrays have been up there for several years now. In this case, the ones on S6 have been up there since 2009. And those arrays are doing great for us and doing great science, but over time, just normal wear and tear, they get used up a little bit, and some of those strings that generate the power on those arrays just fall offline. That's a standard thing that we have built into our power plans for years, and so looking at the 1 Bravo array and how it's degraded over time, we know that this one is a good one to go after to increase the capabilities for future usage. So this graphic shows exactly kind of the playbook that we're following right now, with 2 Bravo and 4 Bravo on the port side completely done. 1 Bravo is what we're going to be going after next Tuesday to add the mod kit, and then the mod kits have already been added to 3 Alpha and 4 Alpha. We'll swing back in January and add the 1 Alpha mod kit in a future EVA, and then those 6 arrays will be set up and ready by middle of next year. As Dina said, the 1 Alpha and 1 Bravo IROSAs will be coming up around that time. So that extra science and that extra power is really useful for our operations on station. As we look towards next Tuesday, the teams are getting ready. The flight control teams and the crews are getting ready with the launch of Cygnus this morning.
So as Dina mentioned, the spacewalks are planned for around the end of the month. The first one will be November 28th is our projected date, followed by December 1st. Of course, as time gets closer, we'll make sure that that's still the best date for the plan. The 2 spacewalks are very similar. We're going to different sides of the vehicle. As you saw on the graphic, 3 alpha and 4 alpha are on opposite sides of the vehicle, but the overall flow of the spacewalks are pretty similar, where we're getting an array, bringing it out there, and then getting it fully electrically mated and then deployed. The crew roles are still to be announced, but I do want to point out that this is an EVA that involves the entirety of the crew members on ISS. So Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Frank will all be extremely involved, whether that is out the door in the spacesuits or inside helping with the airlock and spacesuit operations, and then flying the robotic arm. We will have a crew member on the arm for the spacewalk, and so their crew members inside will be flying that arm and making sure that they are safe and where they need to be to do the work. So it will be a all hands on deck day for both those spacewalk days, with all crew members helping make this successful. On the ground, Nick Haig will be our ground IV. He will be the person talking to the crew members outside, making sure they know where to go and what to do. Nick is an experienced ISS crew member and has done spacewalks himself as well. And then Chris Mundy, who you'll hear from a little bit later, is our EVA officer in mission control.
And we are sending out new astronauts that have never done a spacewalk before. So this is a good opportunity for them to get outside and do a fairly straightforward assembly task. Frank was the ground IV for the first set of mod kits that we installed. So he has a very good background understanding what we're doing with that assembly process. So, but one big difference is that we have a fixture on the side of the solar array blanket box that is a fixture that is used by the robotic arm to grapple the solar array if it were to be jettisoned. It's no longer needed for that, and it gets in the way from installing this mod kit. So we have to remove that bracket. We've done it before. We have not had a problem with it before, but we're doing it during the EVA where we're going to install the mod kit. That's the first time we've done that. That's a little different. There's no higher risk, no big difference, just that this particular time that has to be removed in our EVA. The other thing is we're kind of the building blocks, as we all mentioned, about the scaffolding where the solar array is going to be installed. So we're kind of the backbone for that. And we want Chris and his team to have every opportunity to get these EVAs done in the time frame that we have allocated for an EVA. So because of that, Dean already mentioned, we're going to install one of the cables, and that will help Chris's EVA get done hopefully within the 6.5-hour time period that we normally associate with EVAs. So it will give the crew members an opportunity.
Second and third EVAs in the series, the 2 IROSA-Install EVAs. As was mentioned earlier, the primary. I mentioned our EVAs. The 2 EVAs are very similar to one another. On the first EVA, we head out in the starboard direction, where we'll head out to the 3A installation location. And then on the second EVA, we'll head out to the port side of the vehicle for the 4A installation. Our EVAs are kind of broken up into 4 separate chunks of time. The first chunk of the EVA is we'll come outside and we'll start to prepare everything. That means we have to go prepare our work sites. We transfer bags from the airlock all the way out to our work site on the starboard or port side of the vehicle. We'll then work to release some bolts and tie-down mechanisms that held arrays in place during the launch. We'll also have a crew member setting up the robotic arm. They'll be installing a foot restraint onto the robotic arm, and that will help us later on as we carry the array from the carrier all the way over to the mod kit location. Once we're done with the prep, that's when the real fun begins. That's when we get to actually pull the array off of the carrier. And so we'll have one crew member in the robotic arm, in the foot restraint, and we'll release the last bolt holding the IROSA onto the carrier, and we'll pull the array off, and we'll use the robotic arm to fly us over to the mod kit installation location. The free float crew member, the one not in the arm, will head over, meet up, and the 2 crew members will work to install the arrays onto the existing mod kit. Once we have it there, we'll be able to unfold the array, so it's actually hinged, and we have to unfold it onto the mod kit, and then secure it with some structural bolts. After that, we get into our third chunk of time, which is now electrically integrating the new array into the existing power system on ISS. So to do that, we have to install a couple of different Y cables that get installed. Once those are fully connected, we will be able to route power from the legacy array and the new IROSA array into the ISS power system. Once it's electrically connected and structurally connected, we're now good to go deploy our array. So we'll get crew members into position to view the deploy, and we'll release the last 2 bolts holding it down, and we'll deploy the array. That whole process takes about 6 to 10 minutes as the array unrolls and unfolds up to its full deployment position. After that, we get into our final, our home stretch chunk of time here, and that's our cleanup section. And so we'll pack up our bags, we'll clean up our tools, we'll head back inboard on the first EVA. We'll do some get-ahead work to help prepare for the second EVA by removing some launch beams that were holding the first array in place. That gives access to the second array. Once that's complete, we'll head back into the airlock, get the crew safely back inside, and we'll get ready for our second EVA. Our second EVA, as we mentioned, is just going to be a repeat of those 4 things. So we'll go out, we'll do our prep, we'll remove the IROSA from the carrier, install it on the mod kit, route the cables, electrically connect it, and then deploy, and then we'll clean up and come back inside. We'll be done with our second EVA. So after that's complete, after 2 great EVAs, we'll have 2 new shiny IROSAs installed out on the outside of the space station with increased power generation capability. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're going to move into the Q&A portion of today's briefing. So again, if you're on
The questions we're working through right now, I will say that Northrop Grumman is prime right now. We're not even in integrated operations until tomorrow, around 11 a.m. Houston time. But we are working closely with them. And right now, the array is not deployed, and it goes through some stages of deploy, and it is not deployed. And so the team is trying to assess the data that they have right now, I'll just tell you, and figure out their next steps. So I'm kind of giving you kind of a general answer at this point because really, like you said, it's very new, and Northrop is primary for those types of questions, really. Now, can we capture and berth in this configuration? We are absolutely looking at that, but I don't have a status of that. We really are not even sure the configuration that we're talking about yet. Our teams are going to be concerned about, there's different, like I said, there's different stages of the deploy. So if it ends up partially deployed, then it could, I'd say, jiggle upon capture or berthing, or it could come open. So those are the types of things and risk assessments that we'll be doing if necessary as it approaches. Of course, we'll get great viewing when it gets closer to see what it looks like. But again, I think that it's really early, and I'm very hopeful, actually, that Northrop is going to find a way to deploy the array fully. And so, I think that we have a really good chance at getting there long before we enter integrated ops with ISS.
All right, thank you. Next question is from Marcia Dunn with Associated Press.
Yes, hi. Dee and I have some more Cygnus questions, if you don't mind. I'm just wondering, as things stand now with only 1 array deployed, that's enough power for the Cygnus to get to where it needs to go. Is that correct? And then it's a matter of how unstable it might be if only 1 array remains open. I think that's what you're saying. And how long could the capsule loiter in the neighborhood for a while if it's not ready to be grabbed on Wednesday, and how much time could it just hang around waiting? Thanks.
Okay, well, first regarding power, I know that it's doing well right now. And then the team at Northrop, and then of course we'll work with our NASA team as well, but we'll assess as it goes through the various orientations on its way to ISS, will the power be acceptable? And so of course we'll be looking at that, and we'll be looking at its duration on ISS. And then how long can it loiter? There is enough propellant to perform at least 1 re-rendezvous each mission, and so we have that. And so where you actually decide to sort of hold the vehicle determines how much propellant you use. And so we have not yet worked through at all where we would have a vehicle hold or how much time we would have if we had a different type of a rendezvous, or maybe held it for longer periods of time. And like I said, that would vary depending on where we are in the rendezvous. So we're all working on that right now. But like I said, I am pretty hopeful that we'll get the other array deployed.
Thank you. Next question is Marcia Smith, Space Policy Online.